Hello and welcome. I'm Vincent Makori and this is Africa 54. Officials in South Sudan say gunmen have raided a United Nations compound housing 5,000 civilians and UN peacekeepers, killing at least 20 people and wounding 60. Officials say armed youth overran the UN mission in South Sudan compound Thursday in the capital of Jonglei State, Bor, and opened fire. UN spokesperson Stephanie Dujarric called the attack on a location where civilians are under UN protection a serious escalation.
The Secretary General calls on the government of South Sudan to immediately take steps to ensure the safety of all UN personnel, protection of civilian sites in South Sudan. He also calls on all parties to refrain from any actions or statements that could further escalate the situation.
The U.S. ambassador to the UN said the U.S. will work with its allies to determine who is responsible for the attack and to bring the perpetrators to justice. Tens of thousands of civilians have been sheltering at the UN bases across the country since fighting broke out late last year. Now, for more, we are joined live via Skype from Nairobi by Gabe Joselow. Hello, Gabe.
Hi, Vincent.
Now, there are quite a number of versions as to what really happened in that UN camp. Tell us some more. What are you hearing?
Yeah, there's a couple competing versions of events. The United Nations says that a group of protesters or demonstrators came to the gates of the compound in Bor and then turned rowdy. It turned out the members of the group were armed. The peacekeepers, according to the UN version, fired warning shots. And then the attackers got inside the gates and started firing at civilians inside until peacekeepers could fight back and repel them. Now, the other version of events from the South Sudan government is that actually it was the UN peacekeepers who started firing first, which provoked the violence. So it's sort of unclear. Maybe the government was referring to those warning shots, but we do know it was a pretty big fight there. The death toll now is up into around 50 or 60 people and still to be finally tallied.
And actually, we saw some latest reports indicating that the government of South Sudan has sent soldiers there to protect civilians. What does that mean? The UN does not have the ability to protect civilians in those camps?
Well, I think that's the criticism you'll see, is that the UN had their guard down or didn't have enough forces in place to prevent an attack like this. You know, you have to remember there are tens of thousands of South Sudanese civilians who are taking refuge at bases across the country, and they've been there for many years. I'm sorry, since December, for many months. So what you're seeing now is the UN trying to do more to protect them and to keep the humanitarian situation from getting worse. But as there's ongoing fighting in the country, we're actually seeing more people seeking shelter at these bases. So it's becoming a much more significant or much bigger issue.
But indeed, this is not the first time actually an attack is happening at a UN base, isn't it so?
That's right. There was another attack early on in the conflict in December in Bor, but at a different base where some armed youths got in and started killing people much the same way. That you might recall there was a U.S. operation to actually rescue to evacuate people who were working there, and actually some U.S. Military personnel were also injured in some of that fighting.
Well, thank you, Gabe. We'll continue monitoring the situation there. Thanks for your updates. That's Gabe Joselow reporting live from Nairobi.